Time to welcome you here to a special edition of the City of Muskegon Planning Commission. The way we do our business in the Planning Commission is items are normally a public hearing. And we'll open the public hearing. We'll have staff explain to us the request. Commissioners will have a chance to ask staff any questions they wish. And then we'll ask the person who initiated the request to come to the podium. We have a new procedure tonight. We need you to write your name and address on the list up there and also give it to us. And then you may speak to the item. When you're done, the commissioners will have a chance to ask that person questions. After they have asked all the questions that they want, I will open it to anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to the item. We have a lot of people here. We only have one item tonight that we're dealing with, so I assume we're all here for the same reason. So I would like to keep this meeting from going on into the night. And we can do that by not repeating information. If information is presented and it's understood, you can come and concur to that, but please don't go over the same information more than once. After everybody has had a chance to speak, if someone would like to make another additional comment based on what they heard that hasn't been brought up, I'll give you an opportunity to speak briefly again. But all speaking must be done from the podium. Okay, any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Commissioner, are we filling out cards to speak? Question
No.
cards?
No.
There's something in the notes about that.
No, we don't operate that way.
Thank you.
One other point, I believe I'm correct, this stops at the Planning Commission level, isn't it? This is a final approval. This will not go to the City Commission. So the decision that we make here tonight will be the final decision on this matter to come before the city. Okay? All right, it is 4 o'clock and we have a quorum, so roll call, please.
Mahalski,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Warmington,
Here.
Smith, Lezay,
Here.
Spataro, Doyle,
Here.
Parker,
Yeah.
Mike Sell.
Then we go to our only item, hearing case 2012-008.
This is a request for a special use permit for section 1500 of Article 15 to allow the outdoor storage of aggregate at 2400 Lakeshore Drive. The proposed area for the aggregate storage is roughly 26.5 acres. It's listed as Unit 1 on the survey and the map. The storage of aggregate in the I-2 district must receive a special use permit. We do not have any history of this property being used for storage and the export of aggregate. And we understand that that Melching demo has met with the Lakeside and Bluffton Beachwood neighborhoods recently.
I think you should pull your microphone a little closer. Everybody heard? Okay, commissioners, any questions for staff on the request? Seeing none, would the person making the request please come to the podium, give your name and address, write it down, and feel free to speak on this item.
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, first we want to thank you and the audience for coming out here on Thursday night. We know this is a special hearing and we appreciate your accommodations. My name is Craig Dadema. I'm an architect with Triangle Associates, and we've been asked by Doug Melching to assist him with the master plan of the former Sappy site, as well as helping and working with him through the zoning process. I have 3 areas I'd like to discuss with the commission in terms of a presentation tonight. The first area would be about the uses that we're anticipating seeing on the site. These are based on real market conditions, real people that have expressed an interest in Mr. Melching to occupy some of the site. The reason we're looking at the entire site and not just this portion, which would be the portion of the special land use, that was based on staff and our understanding of the commission wanting to see the big plan before you would make a decision on a portion of the plan. And hopefully our information is correct. We'd also like to talk a little bit about those criterias within the ordinance that I know the commission needs to look at in terms of making your decision. And that's going to be more relevant to the special land use request. And the last part I want to summarize is why we feel that this should be approved and the reasons that we hope the commission will consider. Now, under the first of these items, we've had a couple of public forums, and partially I think everybody understands now is that there are certain deed restrictions on this property that were imposed on the property when Mr. Melching purchased it. And those deed restrictions are numerous, but perhaps the two most important ones is that the property can only be used for industrial use. And secondarily, there are certain restrictions in terms of communications about some of the existing conditions on property. Again, I'm an architect, I'm an attorney, so I can't get into the details of those issues. But I think it's important for people here, for the commission to understand that we're forced to look at industrial uses for this property. Currently it's zoned I2, heavy industrial, and we're trying to work as much as possible within those existing conditions, or existing uses. Now, of those uses that are anticipated at this point in time, vast majority are all approved uses under the zoning ordinance. They would include steel scrap metal processing or storage, the power plant, adaptive reuse of the existing plant, adaptive reuse of a portion of one of the part of the building into a biofuel. Basically, they would be taking wood pulp, wood chips, and creating wood fuel to use in wood burning furnaces. A marine repair facility, some asphalt storage, which we would consider falling under the chemical storage. And Mr. Franczek here has been very, very cooperative. We did go through a number of these uses with city staff to make sure that our understanding was consistent with the city staff's understanding. And of course, there's about 250,000 square feet of existing manufacturing facility that is built like a tank. And we'd like to see if we can find a user to either use warehousing or manufacturing in that existing building. The special land use that we're requesting falls under the aggregate or bulk material storage. And as you're aware, hopefully the people in the audience are aware, that is listed as an approved use subject to planning commission approval. So again, we're trying to work as much as possible within the current ordinance. We should note here that Mr. Melching is not intending to occupy or operate any of those intended uses. He's approaching this more as a land developer, creating opportunities, subdividing the parcels, and attracting those future users to either purchase or rent that land. So if you have some specific questions about the operation of some of those uses, we can answer them to the best of our knowledge, but we're not going to be the operators. They would all have to work with city staff in terms of any plan development and work within the ordinance. Now we see that the development will take 5 to 10 years to fully develop. This is not going to be an overnight sensation. And we want to have a cooperative attitude with the community, with the neighbors, and with the city staff in terms of how this property does get developed. We feel that working within the existing zoning versus going through a PUD process will reduce some of the administrative burden on both the city staff, the planning commission, city commission, as well as Mr. Melching, because we see this plan evolving over time. We recognize that by not going through a PUD, we have to live within the existing city ordinances, and all future users need to live within those existing ordinances. We've tried to be transparent in our process. So far, we've met with city staff on a couple occasions, and we've also met with two of the neighborhood organizations. First with the Lakeside Neighborhood Association, and I'd like to provide a quote and provide a letter from them regarding their summary of our meeting. Who would I give this to? I just felt since I would be quoting from it, so I'm here that I give you a copy as well. This is a letter written by Eloise Hefty, and I'm just going to read a portion of it. She says, discussing it afterwards, I'd like to assume that the general audience thought the openness and information giving, i.e. charts, drawings, etc., were excellent. It seemed that the majority of the people were open-minded and receptive to your information. A few have taken the negative approach, are not aware of the positive effects your company will have on the city of Muskegon and the lakeside community as a whole. We need the Sackville property cleaned up and something positive built on that piece of property. The light industry approach apparently is the answer. So we appreciated the opportunity first to speak to the Lakeside Association, but also for them to put in their own words their summary of that meeting. Just Tuesday night, and part of the reason why we asked for the special hearing, we wanted to also go to the Beechwood Bluffton Neighborhood Association. They provided an opportunity for participants to write down questions. And we were able to take all 73 questions and summarize them into different categories. We weren't just there listening. We wanted to take that information back so we could see what kind of interest, or where is the interest from the community, and how can we provide answers to some of these questions, if we can't answer it now, how can we answer it in the future. In a summary, out of the 73, 20 of them were really good questions pertaining to our specific anticipated uses. We appreciated that. 11 of them involved the city process, the zoning process, and that's important for education too, so people understand what is an applicant's rights, what is the city's responsibilities, and how do we engage the community in this discussion. There were 10 questions about the deed restrictions, and they related around to a couple things, either around the environmental issues or on the allowable uses of industrial only. But 22 of them, quite a few, were based on environmental conditions and questions about the site. And then of the remaining 5 related to jobs and economic, 2 were about the current demolition process, and 3 I just had to put into the category left field. I really couldn't figure out where they fit in. So we really appreciate it, sir.
Could you maybe condense this down to the questions and stuff that regard the proposal tonight?
I will do that.
Rather than dealing with the whole project. Appreciate that.
I will do so. We recognize that this property's been a heavy industrial use for 109 years, well before any of us have ever been near the site. We did this extra graphic, and can the commission see this? We thought it would be helpful to overlay our master plan on a satellite photograph of the existing map. And as you can see, a large portions of this site was used for material bulk storage, aggregate storage, similar to our current request. We're not arguing that it should be grandfathered in, but historically we know ships have been coming onto this port, material has been offloaded and stored and used into that manufacturing process. We are actually, in our proposal, reducing some of that area where that exterior material would be used. The material that was used there was coal, lime, wood chips, pulp, so on and so forth. Now, to be sensitive to the environment and to the neighborhoods, we're proposing a 100-foot buffer of natural area on both the east, the west, and the east sides of the site. That buffer would be left in a natural state. We want to make sure that the shore to water connection remains as it currently is. We're also proposing creating a minimum of a 100-foot buffer along the special land use side, along Lakeshore Drive, where we'd also want to be able to build some landscape berms in order to create some screening from the street level of the activities on the site. Now, our master plan shows the development of a private roadway system to access all of the parcels on the site. We think this is important in order to reduce some of the flow of traffic.
Again, could you keep your comments specific to the questions that we have to answer? We got a lot of people here waiting to speak.
Okay. Well, I think it's important that all access onto the special land use parcel would be in and out of the private roadway and controlled in terms of limited number of locations onto the street. One of the areas is that we need to make sure there's adequate water and sewer. I think staff agrees with that. We have in Mr. Franzak's report, no objections from the fire or police department in terms of our issues. In terms of environmental remediation or improvements, we have a commitment to work with all the required governmental authorities on any of the work and construction activities that we do. So many of the concerns in the environmental areas, we feel we'll have an opportunity to address those as we're given permission to proceed with construction on the site. And the property values, we feel, are certainly would be enhanced, if not enhanced, not diminished from what is currently on the site, which is basically an abandoned manufacturing facility. Now, the reasons that we think the Planning Commission should approve our request, I think an important consideration might be the limitations that the Army Corps of Engineers identifying in terms of dredging for commercial harbors. I'm sure many people have heard that the Corps is saying if you have less than 1 million tons of commercial traffic, they may not have funds for dredging. We did some homework here, and this does relate to materials being able to be used on this site. From that 2005 to 2009, the Muskegon Harbor was averaging a little over 2 million tons of material. However, if you subtract the coal, and our understanding is that the Cobb plant, when decommissioned, will no longer have that coal traffic. As you can see, we're under the 1 million tons mark. We do not have any data for 2010 and 2011. The operator of the special land use for this aggregate bulk material storage site estimates somewhere between 400,000 to 700,000 tons of material will be used yearly on that site, thereby helping the community ensure that they'll be receiving those federal funds. Now, how much is that worth? If federal funds aren't available, then it would be potentially up to the community to have to fund that. And we did some history from one of our consultants, and that over a 10-year period, and he had data for about 4 or 5 of those years, he had estimates between $368,000 to $1 million per year of cost to dredge the channels and keep the commercial shipping available.
We're not using it, why would we want to drive?
Sir, you have to wait.
So again, we feel that approval of the special land use will help the community ensure that they're maintaining enough aggregate tonnage, or I should say tonnage in aggregate, to seek and secure those federal funds.
Okay, thank you. You got nothing more about the particular question?
Well, I do want to address Mr. Franczek's recommendations and the reference to the 1999 waterfront plan. We've reviewed that plan in quite a bit of detail. And we saw that the plan did acknowledge the importance of bulk storage as a historical as well as a current use on Muskegon Lake. We also noticed that in 1999, the plan didn't necessarily address an adaptive reuse of the Sappy site. At that time, nobody would have had the vision that that site would be abandoned in the manner that it was. And we think it's important within this process that we consider, okay, what now, especially considering the deed restrictions. The plan does recommend moving this type of activity to the far eastern side of the lake in the WI PUD district. But I think the plan also acknowledges that that area is quite shallow and currently could not support that without extensive dredging and potential additional environmental challenges that that type of dredging would cause. So we recognize the plan says this is where the city wants it in 1999. We're asking you to reconsider that and say, where are we today in 2012? And is that truly a better site? It has some pros, it also has some significant cons. We think that there's going to be a significant economic development benefit to the city by this type of
I'm going to give you 1 more minute, sir.
I will conclude then. The aggregate storage is an important primer to the pump in order for this whole plan to be executed. We have a user that currently can put work in place on that site upon your approval. And with that, that provides a stimulus for additional improvements to be made so that other parts of the plan could be put into place. We don't know what our plan would be if we were denied here tonight. So we thank you for your time, and we request your consideration of our request.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Dayton,
He's got the floor.
we know you're the mayor, but.
I didn't think that.
Mr. Dayton, you mentioned earlier about addressing some of the environmental issues on the property. Can you tell us how you would go about doing that, given the deed restrictions on the property?
I hope I didn't phrase it that way because I might have misphrased myself. There are limitations as to what can be disclosed because of the deed restrictions.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Warmington.
How many jobs would come with the jobs on the site?
This is pure speculation, because again, we're not the operators. We certainly see well over 100.
On
maybe
the
a
site,
couple-
excuse me,
Oh,
on
on
aggregate site.
the aggregate site. Probably less than a dozen.
And that's speculation on your part, I understand that. because we're not doing it. And the estimate of the, I'm assuming the person that's weighing around it is 400,000, 700,000 tons. I did a little homework myself, and that number is a dream, at least in today's market, perhaps somewhere down the road, but in today's market, is that person here? I'm just saying that I called and found out that the other aggregate spots on the lake are doing under 500,000. So they would be speculating at this point in time that they would already double, at least double the amount of aggregate that's currently in. And I just don't see that much more business coming from it.
That was the information I was given.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Doyle?
Have you put any studies into the truck traffic and the routes that the trucks would take to distribute the aggregate?
That was a discussion that we had with Mr. Franczek. We asked the city what their recommendations would be. We have not received a response on that yet. I noticed that the 1999 plan did talk about the needs to make improvements to McCracken, perhaps Lincoln, and I think some of those improvements to McCracken have been made. But one of the advantages of a master plan, and putting in some type of communal requirements, is that we could direct that truck traffic in a certain direction. And of course, that hopefully we could come up with some teeth in those words so that we could also enforce it with those various users and operators.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone in the audience? I'm going to start with the gentleman back here. He has his hand up first. We'll get to everybody. Try and make it brief and to the point. Write down your name and address and give it to us also. Mr. Page.
Thank you, sir. My name is Lauren Page. I'm from, I live on 3328 Wilcox Avenue in Muskegon, down the Bluffton area. I'm not here to ask this commission, by the way, you guys are doing a great job. I know most of you, sort of get along with most of you also. You guys are doing a good job. You have a difficult job to do. I understand that. I hope most of the people here also understand that.
Thank you very much.
And I've done some homework too. The gentleman did some homework, the mayor's done some homework, we've all done our homework. It's very, very good. This is a good educational process, and that's what I do. I'm a teacher. Right? So I did some homework because I wanted to find out what, we've got a plan for this city. We've got the city master plan. I wanted to take a look at it. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because I know you gentlemen have also done your homework. And you know what the city plan says. Right? And I'm certainly in your case, ma'am, I know you
To the point, Mr. Page, please.
So I'm not asking the city to make any exception to anything that is happening here. I'm not asking I'm asking this body to just basically do nothing. And I'm referencing, by the way, the master plan. I've got a section out that is sub-area plans dealing with sub-plan, sub-area number 9, and one part of it references the S.D. Warren paper mill. Well, we know now that S.D. Warren paper mill became the Sappy paper mill. Sappy paper mill has gone out of business, has gone out of town, is no longer operating, is no longer putting anything job-wise or anything else-wise into this community. They're gone. What we have left, by the way, and just a little editorial comment before I give you the fact. What we have left, by the way, are 2 or 3 outside corporations, one multinational and one Michigan corporation, not Muskegon corporation, I'll point out, and another corporation from Grand Rapids who have come together and carefully crafted a deed which has in it deed restrictions, and if I hear that one more time, I'm gonna start getting sick. Deed restrictions that disallow, even despite the questions that you folks have had, make me believe, we can't even look at this deed. Have we seen this deed? We can't even look at this deed to see what these restrictions are. We're letting an outside, a company from Africa, right? Not even an American-based company, and two outside corporations come to our city, put together an agreement that restricts us from even going onto the property. The city manager had questions that lead me to believe that we know nothing about what's happening there as far as the environment, as far as what's in that water, what's in that land, what's in that smokestack, what's in anything.
Hell yeah.
And we can't even find out because we're restricted. Here's what the master plan says. This is our master plan. This is Muskegon's master plan. This is not South Africa's master plan. This is not Nunika's master plan. And it's not Grand Rapids' master plan. The master plan says we are going to support the continued growth and development of SD Warren, SAPI, within the limits of its current site. In doing so, we'll work with the industry to address their environmental concern and therefore their part number one. Part number two, very short, very to the point. In the event of a relocation by SD Warren, redevelop the plant site for non-industrial use. Key term here is non-industrial. Non-industrial use. As industrial development along the shoreline is eliminated, restrict the movement of deep water, and in parentheses, bulk shipment carrier sub-vessels to the sub-area, hereby reducing and eventually eliminating the use of the shoreline for temporary storage and/or processing of waterborne industrial products. Work your plan. You know, they always told us in school, make a plan, work your plan your work your plan, ladies and gentlemen. Work your plan.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Sir?
Thanks. Name's Dan Mills, and I had to, Dan Mills, 1817 Mills Avenue.
Let's fill it out on the paper, please.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, thanks. And I also, want to acknowledge, I don't know you commissioners really well. Lately, though, I've met with a few of you. I've been really impressed with your abilities and your intelligence and your understanding of the issues and things like that. So anyway, I do.
Getting so flattering that...
Well, no, this is the truth. I'm not trying to flatter you. It's
Please,
true.
keep to the
Okay, so I'll get to the point. We asked a bunch of questions the other night at, and it's on a video. You can see it on the internet. And the answers to most of these questions, like for instance, where would you find the emergency plan? I don't know. What kind of documentations have to be in place before you can use explosives, before you can, use them for demolition? I don't know.
You're getting off subject again. Keep it on to the aggregate.
Yeah, all right, yeah, okay. What kind of aggregate? I could just leave it at that. Because if I was to say I'm going to build a facility down the road to house people, you would probably want to know what kind of people. Am I talking about prisoners? Am I talking about threats to the community? What is this aggregate? And what's it used? And why are we going to build containers to hold the current contaminants, even though we aren't allowed to know what they are? Oh no, this affects the health of the residents of the community, but we aren't allowed to know because there's been some private deal between big money corporations that prevents the people who live here from knowing what the threats are. Why would you contain this stuff unless you're planning on putting more there? Because there's big money in storing toxic waste, I know. What kind of aggregate? That's my question.
Last time, Mr. Mills.
That's my question.
Speak to the
What kind
subject.
of aggregate?
Keep it to about a minute more and then...
Well, that's all. What kind of aggregate and why? Because I can think of a number of reasons, but I don't know. Nobody's told me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. See you at the back.
Do we get an answer? I just asked a
Oh.
question.
You asked the questions to us.
Oh, I'm asking the question, maybe I'll get an answer. I didn't get an answer the other night. Next time, I don't know.
My guess is without the applicant being here, you're not gonna.
We don't get an answer
You're
yet.
gonna answer, but.
So what, they just trust you.
But
We'll just
realistically,
trust you.
you would think it was stone and salt and the
We'll
other
trust.
limestone.
Honest guy.
Thank you. Now, yeah.
Eve Douglas, 2471 Lakeshore Drive, and listening to everything that's been said and reading on MLI. There are some concerns. I live actually right across the street from the paper mill. And just to let you know, we purchased our house, we looked at it in 1999, bought it in 2000, and it was pretty obvious at that point that Sappy was on its way out. So I think the master plans the city did at that time was pretty to the point. But specifically to the aggregate, truck traffic, talking about going up McCracken, other than going Lakeshore to Layton, pretty much you're going through pretty heavy residential areas and damage to the roads. Less than a dozen jobs seems to be a lot of environmental impact for only a dozen or less jobs, and I'm assuming not a whole lot of tax incentives for people who have borne the burden of Sappy's impact on the community as far as taxes. You then are looking at ships into the port carrying what sort of invading species when we already know the problems that have come with that. And quite frankly, one of Muskegon's biggest assets is the lake, and how much money has been put into redeveloping the shoreline to go back to the natural shoreline along the bike path and so on and so forth. And so to continue to have this large piece of property on the lake shore, industrial, when you're trying to do something very different than the rest of the lake shore, just seems to be very contradictory. And also looking at aggregate and having lived across from the paper mill, as we did, I can't imagine that the dirt, noise, and damage that's done to the homes and the community is going to be any less. And then you're talking, and it all goes back to those hidden agendas that Sappy put into the deed. I just have a real hard time that we have to honor those when how many things did they not honor, including not decreasing cuts in taxes. And so, I mean, they got cuts in taxes and promptly cut workforce numbers by well over 100, dropping it below the levels that they were allowed. But then we have to run the risk of contaminating our properties, our water, with runoff and so on and so forth. We just have no idea what's out there, and I think allowing aggregate is just kind of a slippery slope.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we've had 3 people speaking, and we've covered a multitude of concerns. Heard all those concerns. We really don't need to hear them again. If you have any new information, anybody got new information they'd like to speak to, does everybody who is here in opposition pretty much agree with what's been said so far? One more person with a hand up.
Oh.
My name is Melissa Bowden. I live at 118.
A little louder, please.
I live in, sorry.
We're a little older group.
Okay. Melissa Bowden. I live at 118 Rudderman Drive in North Muskegon. Some of the questions that weren't addressed yet were I asked yesterday where the contaminant spots are on the site, and even for him to point them out, he couldn't do so. And how come we can't know where those spots are? Also,
Yeah, keep it to the subject of this aggregate.
right.
We're going to be dealing with this site for a long, long time.
Aggregate was a very broad definition for what could be stored there, one of which was petroleum. And petroleum I found, I also did my homework, was found on the site to be one of the contaminants as to why the demolition was delayed in the first place. So now they're going to put more petroleum storage there. Also into a buffer.
That's not part of what we're
Oh,
talking
sorry,
about.
again.
We're just talking about that pink part on here.
Oh, okay, thanks. And then also, there was also stated of a buffer of trees to help with the environmental problem. And I was just curious if you guys honestly believe that a layer of trees will help our environment and kind of be a buffer, you know, I don't know. And then also for the jobs, it was told that the less than dozen less than a dozen of jobs will be provided, and how long will those jobs be provided? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to bring up something new we haven't heard before? Sir?
My name is Roger W. Nye, I'm 1495. My name is Roger W. Nye, I live at 1495 Westwood Circle in Norton Shores. Question of aggregate, what is it? When we're dealing with a company which is a demolition company, it seems logical to presume that this aggregate is going to be waste from demolition projects that the company has undertaken. This is the nature of the beast you're dealing with here, a demolition company. Don't ever forget that. They're moving fast. They're trying to push things through. They talk about transparency, but then when we ask specific questions, we get an opaque wall. As far as the deed restrictions are concerned, the deed restrictions are the problem of the purchaser. And it's my understanding, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, but that a contract can be voided if it's contrary to public policy. And I'd like to hear from the city attorney about that. In my opinion, this would be an excellent candidate for voiding, because it is definitely not in the interest of the people of this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything been said? Yes, ma'am. I'm going to get anybody off.
I'm Shanti Devi, 4380 Hackett Point Lane, Muskegon on North Shores. I think that, for a lot of us, the crux of the matter is we don't want something to be pushed through fast without really looking at it. And I know that the planners and the commissioners have been looking at this for a little while, but these big, like the first person said, these big corporations that are trying to circumvent EPA law with real estate law, this is something, if it's a common practice, then we have to get to the bottom of it and change that kind of a situation, because we should be able to know these things before we go forward on development of that property. I mean, even digging up stuff in the area can cause dust and stuff into the air and things to go into the water that worsens the situation. And so, for me, the issue is, even with the blowing up of the smokestack, we made calls and found out that there was not the proper DEQ permits done for this. And that's why it was stopped. And so, I just feel like the speed at which they're trying to go through and the restrictions that they have in terms of not being able to tell, this is a situation where we need to take a stand as a city and put a stop to this.
Thank you very much. Okay, commissioners, good chance on. Yeah. Gotta be quick on those.
I'm trying to get you to look over this
We
way.
have a gentleman he just came in, so hopefully this isn't new to him.
Well, I hope. I just came
We
in.
need your name and address first,
My
and
name's
write it
Tom
down on
Hall.
a paper too.
Tom Hall, 2224 Sheridan Street, right across the street from Sappy. And it came in a little late, so I don't know if it has been addressed, but the traffic down that lane.
Yes,
we
we
took
got
out the
traffic.
center lane, we talked about that.
The roads, what it'll do to the
Because
roads.
in the summer, it's pretty hard to get on and off Lake Shore, living right up there. And with the bike lanes and no center lane, I know some traffic, some demolition, we're gonna have to eat some. If they have the construction storage there, there'll be a lot more than that.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Lori, I have something to do. Ron Matthews, 3711 Wilson Street. Gentleman spoke to the dredging funds. I was just at a meeting the other day in Cleveland. Dredging funds have been approved for Muskegon for the next few years. as well as Grand Haven, Ferrisburg, Holland, St. Joe, so they have that. That's not an issue. There are more than enough aggregate docks on Muskegon Lake right now to cover enough tonnage to keep us qualified, although it doesn't seem that they're looking at the running tons quite as hardly as they were in the past. We would just like a level playing field. A lot of us businesses, we try to locate where you have indicated we should locate, and would like to keep an even playing field so you can't just locate anywhere on the lake. Thank you.
One more individual here.
Did he sign in?
I left my card right up there.
Looking for new.
Brian Trevor, 3256 Wilcox. My question relates to the 400,000 to 700,000 tons of aggregate. It appears that they want some broadside ship tie-up in this area here. Currently, the waterfront cannot accept broadside ship tie-up. They have a application to the DEQ to dredge approximately 50,000 yards of material off of that point, even though we've been told the deed restriction says they can't excavate anything, that they need to excavate 50,000 cubic yards off of there. My question was, how would that 400,000 to 700,000 tons be affected if that dredging request was denied by the DEQ, as it probably will be?
Thank you. I don't believe anybody here has that. Yes, sir.
Mike Murphy, 1853 Singing Drive, Muskegon. I admire that we have freedom of speech in the U.S. It's wonderful. It is private property, as I would like to point out. The deed restrictions, I'm familiar with this project. The deed restrictions, you can get the deed from the county, so if anybody wants to go to the county and read the deed restrictions, they're wrote by attorneys, so they are hard to understand, but you can read them. You can also, under Freedom of Information Act, get all DEQ and EPA records on the site. I don't know why we just can't Google it. I mean, you people are saying that we don't have the information. It's out here.
It is not.
Savvy was a good corporate citizen. Savvy spent millions of dollars on that site. And they always made sure that if they had a spill, they documented the spill, cleaned it up to the standards of at that time. All underground storage tanks have been pulled from that site back in the late 80s to early 90s. All this information is available.
It is not, there's nothing there.
So just Google it, you'll find it.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, Mr. Murphy, I've heard this question before about freedom of rights and property rights.
Mm-hmm.
Do you live in a residential area?
Do I live in a residence?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
your house.
Yes, sir.
Would you want a gas station next to your house?
I buy and sell real estate every day.
I
And I would look at what's across the street before I bought it. So if there was a big paper mill
Just
across the
like these
street,
people bought.
We're
these-
getting
Wait a
off
minute.
track.
I'll be done in a minute. I'll be done in a minute.
Please.
This is my point. They bought a piece of property with a certain zoning to it. They're asking for something more than what they purchased. There's no guarantee that comes with asking for a special use permit.
no, never said that.
Well,
Today, we're asking for a special use permit for a special use that is not considered in the zoning law that was published earlier. Mr. Matthews commented about a level playing field. When they control, he works for Verplains, if they control all 5 other docks in the city of Muskegon, that's not a level playing field not to let one other person have a dock. I think that's, road taxes are all paid, aggregate, build your roads. So it's all supplied, trucked off-site to build the roads. Road salt, which every county and every city uses, is also shipped in. All our products come in by ship. So if it has to come from the Detroit side into this market, that's another issue. But I think we got a viable port, the deepest water port in West Michigan, we should use it correctly.
Thank you. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Sir? Back? And we got somebody in the back over here by the camera. You're next.
Richard Becker, and 2224 Sheridan Street, City of Michigan, across the road from Sappy. And my road is it's about the environment. I don't know if I'm off base here or not. If I am, tell me not to sit down, but I'll let you.
Just keep it confined to the
Yeah, well,
special
that's
permit
the
use
stuff
of
that
aggregate on the site.
that they want to bring in there, like, and it was mentioned, gravel, sand, stone and some wood chips.
No,
and,
wood chips are not part of it.
Okay. But anyway, I lived there all this time for 40-some years, and I've seen that lake and line down there myself. I take pictures of it, and it shows, I got pictures that I took of yesterday, how the lake looks right now. It's kind of nicer, cleaning it up. And then the next page, it's what it looked like when exactly was operating it, with all the wood chips and the coal piles back there, right down the hill. And that's a wind tunnel right there. And we get all that wood chips, the coal dust, had to sweep it up. I've been able to go down there and pick it up with my hands, and even coal dust on the house. You know. So walk out in my yard in the morning or in the evening when the dew is out. This is what our shoes look like. I'll show you these pictures if you want to. You know. This is a canoe I have alongside of my garage with the wood chips on it that blow up there. So if you put that stuff back in there, there's some coal dust or gravel, that will have dust. That's all going to come back up there because they can't control the wind. Doesn't matter how much wind you got. The wind is going to go up there, it's going to blow it up there. And all I want to do is, we fought for a long time, get that stuff out of there. And now we don't want to put it back in there 2 years. That's like going back 20 years ago. And that's my point. I just don't want to go back to the way it was. I would used to walk out in the yard with a cup of coffee, the wood chips cold us, in my cup of coffee. You know, and that's the truth. I wouldn't have you guys on that.
Thank you.
It's on this.
Is there anybody else?
That's all. I'll let you take this.
I think we got the picture right now.
Cars
parked out there. 2 or 3 years, I have to get everything.
Hello, my name is Dylan Hosh. I live at 2019 Harrison Avenue in Lakeside. I want to thank the Commission for applying a critical mind to today's hearing and allowing us to speak our minds on this issue. I have 2 quick things. One is the ambiguity with the aggregate. We have a list that is supplied in the newspaper to the community fairly frequently that makes it sound very benign, but it's not a complete and comprehensive list, and it's the ... ellipsis that I think has a lot of us wondering. It certainly has me wondering, well, if there's no problems, why don't we have a comprehensive list of what will be stored there? And second of all, very quickly, I'd like to point out that the only person who spoke today on behalf of this, supporting it, is the realtor who would stand to profit from it as well. Thank you.
I'll give you, nobody else who hasn't spoken, we got one more person, I'll give you an opportunity to rebut.
David Nye, 1495 Westwood Circle, Shores. As far as the deed and the precise stipulations contained therein, Occupy Muskegon has obtained a copy of that deed and several other deeds related to the site. They are currently uploaded. There will be a link from our website at occupymuskegon.net shortly after this meeting. They have already been uploaded to scribed.com. They are available for public viewing as public documents. We've done that work for you folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Okay, everybody's had a chance to speak on. Anybody have anything that they want to rebut?
I just want to rebut the comment. I am a realtor, and I would benefit if we ever redevelop the site. If the site is not redeveloped, there's no commissions paid, so don't worry about it. The benefits are to the community to redevelop the site. Right now, we have an abandoned factory, just like General Motors on 32nd 6th Street. They're tearing it down for a reuse, trying to get a reuse established on the site. So when we talk about aggregate, once again, we know the two companies in this area, Meekos and Verplains, that sell aggregate. They have price sheets available on the web also.
Okay, you got your rebuttal. We've already learned about the aggregate, so thank you.
Just a rebuttal.
Only, what are you going to rebut, sir?
Thanks for asking.
You tell me before I'm going to allow you to speak.
Well, it was the blatant, untruthful statement that there are documents with a DEQ because there are none. And I went over and I talked with Vicki Webster, and so I'm not talking about somebody told me. I went over there, I have it, there are none. They've been waiting since 2006 for documentation, and she was very distressed over that. Probably because of the agreement between these two private parties that people can't know.
Been moved and supported.
Show them, if they exist, show them.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same?
Who supported it?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, I'm ready to make a motion, but I just have a little bit to say in that. I can remember when I was a little kid, and the first time I rode by the paper mill, and I thought, geez, that stinks. You know, and I thought, why would anybody even want that factory sitting on the lake with that odor? And my dad said, just think of the 400 or 500 people that work there and getting a paycheck. So I understood that. I've understood it from the first time I was elected in 1980 to this day. If they were to say they're going to open and there's 200 or 300 good-paying jobs there tomorrow, I'd say fine, let them reopen. But that's not the case. This is the one chance that I have in my lifetime probably to say no more. The real reason is the people that bought it need some cash flow to get the project going, then they shouldn't have bought it. I mean,
Amen.
I'm sorry, if you're going to run a business, and I run my own, you need to know going in how your project's going to work. And I guess if the question is, if we turn it down and you can't go on with your project just because you're not going to have this cash flow from the aggregate sales, then I worry about your ability to complete the rest of them. And I will vote no.
You're making a motion.
I still have it. I move the special land use permit for section 1500 of Article 15 of the zoning ordinance to allow the import, outdoor storage, and export of bulk aggregate in an I-2 general industrial district at 2400 Lakeshore Drive by Melching Demo be denied based on lack of compliance with the city's master land use plan and conditions set forth in section 2332 of the City of Muskegon zoning ordinance.
It's been moved and supported to deny the special permit request. Is there discussion? Commissioner Spadaro.
Yeah, I'm going to be voting for the motion, but I want to make it very clear why. Because there's been a lot of issues raised today over and above the aggregate, and quite honestly, I think we owe it to the developer and the property owner what we expect of them as this moves forward. First of all, let me say, and I think of him a lot when things like this come up, the late Commissioner John Alexson used to say, once in a while we're faced with 100-year decisions. He was talking about downtown and the redevelopment of the Continental property at the time, but I certainly think this fits his definition. What we do on this body and at the city commission level is going to affect this community for 100 years. We've got to take the time to get it right. And we've just heard from the developer that this is a 5 to 10 year project in their estimation. So there's no rush to get this thing started if it's not getting started correctly. I missed the very first few minutes of the presentation, but what I heard from the developer kept referring to the master plan. We have to do this, we have to do that in conformance to the master plan. I want to see a master plan. This is over 100 acres with over a mile of waterfront on Muskegon Lake. We need to have a master plan in place for this site. what is intended. And that includes more than just taking an outline of the site and coloring different parts of it different colors. Okay, there's a private drive. Where is that going to go? To what specification will that be built? What accommodations might be needed on Lakeshore Drive to handle the traffic generated from that private drive? What kind of intended uses, if they're different, like in this case, what the zoning allows as a matter of right, are intended? What will the access points for those be? I mean, is there intentions to move the railroad rights away and the spur tracks that are privately owned? Are there intended uses that require utility hookups and things like that? We need to address those kind of basic issues. With aggregate, and quite honestly, and no offense intended, but I've seen better detail from folks who want to open up a car lot compared to what we got to make a decision about aggregate piles today. You know, okay, we've got trees for screening, but what about dust abatement? What about noise abatement? What about drainage? What about all of those types of issues? So having said that, I want to say, one, I'm not categorically opposed to bulk storage. I think personally, and I think based on what our discussions in this body and on the city commission have been at public meetings to this point, is that the understanding is that there are limitations on this property because it's been used for industrial purposes for 100 years. And that one of the assets that Muskegon Lake has that makes Muskegon as a community unique is that it is a deep water port. And here is an opportunity to create a deep water port facility to add and enhance that particular unique characteristic that we have, and should also create a lot of economic benefits for this community by doing so. So I'm not going to sit there and say categorically I would never authorize the use of the #1 cargo that's shipped on the Great Lakes, which is bulk cargo. But we got to have a plan in place. How is this going to fit in the context of the site? What are the other intended uses, and do they fit with what the industrial zoning allows? So I keep coming back to that. I also look at, I understand the limitations as far as commercial or residential or recreational use. But we do have some limitations on Lakeshore Drive there. Is it possible for us to sit down and address one of the issues that came up? There are bike paths on Lakeshore Drive because we don't have 10 feet north of the curb to put the bike path. That would solve a lot of problems if we could move the bike path north of Lakeshore Drive, even if it's 10 feet north of the curb, which is all the space we really need for that, so we could put a left turn lane back in. Those are the kind of things that I think a detailed master plan should include. Those are the kind of issues we ought to be debating going forward. And when we are comfortable, the 9 of us, that we have reached consensus that this makes sense for the community, then we can start looking at individual uses like aggregate storage. And I may be the only one who thinks, well, okay, I would never say never to that. But we could at least have an intelligible discussion at that point based on an adopted master plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other commissioners wish to speak? Commissioner Warmington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think to the audience in particular, first of all, I want to say is that Doug Melching is a nice guy. And he means absolute no harm to our community. He's trying hard to come in here and, you know, I'm not saying he's not in here to make some money, but he's in here to take a piece of property and do his best to turn it around. Whether things are available online or not, I can tell you that at least as far as the city's been concerned, he's been pretty doggone open to this community. He's had an open house there, had brought a lot of people in, gave tours of the site. They've gone out to 2 of the neighborhoods that are there to make presentations, to get feedback from all of us on what we feel. we want to continue to have a good working relationship with Doug Melching and the people that are there. It's important. There are things, ladies and gentlemen, that can go on to that piece of property that none of us are probably going to like, but it's capable. Based on when it's zoned, it can happen without us having any say on it. So it's extremely important, and I hope, depending on how this goes, that Doug understands this city still wants to work with Melching on that piece of property for the betterment of certainly our community, and certainly we want to be in a position to try to assist them. All of that said, aggregate to me makes absolutely no sense on that site for a couple of reasons. Number one, if we were looking at 20 to 25% of that site to put aggregate on. And from what I can determine, the on-site operators of aggregate, there's normally no more than, what I can see, is 2 people that are there. So to take 25% of that property for 2 jobs, and doing the homework, it's 20 trucks for every 1,000 tons. Well, at 500,000 tons, that would be about 10,000 trucks a year that would be going up and down Lakeshore Drive. Now, we already know there's going to be trucks coming off and on that site. Adding another 10,000 to a road structure that we have redeveloped to be more residential and small commercial business districts, slow the people down as they drive through the business district. That wasn't my idea.
Nice sign.
But to go through there, as Commissioner Spataro said, a bike path that's going through, we're trying to create a community of where people are along the lakefront. So there's no way that I can see to go forward and do that. Based on the tonnage, and I think it's a good point that you bring up, that the tonnage is there, I would say that I would find it very hard to believe that the federal government would say, on the east side of Lake Michigan, we're not going to do any dredging of any of the harbors that are there, because there isn't any harbor that's bringing in the minimum that we have set. So I believe that they would have at least one. And I've got to believe, with Muskegon being the largest deep water port on Lake Michigan, that they aren't going to say no to that. However, if they did, I believe that it really doesn't fall on the citizens of Muskegon to dredge that harbor any more than it falls on the citizens of North Shores to dredge Mona Lakes Harbor, which they haven't done. I would be willing to bet that the users of aggregate that comes in Muskegon Lake would probably all join together and put the dollars in. So, Doug, I want to continue to work with you, but this one is just one that I have to see.
Any other commissioners?
I don't want to plow ground that we've already talked about, Mr. Chairman, but I did want to say a couple real quick things, and one is to reiterate something that Commissioner Spataro said. I heard early on in the presentation from Mr. Dama that they were focusing on the one site, and that was the purpose of the special use permit, but I agree with what Commissioner Spataro said. I really think that we need a master plan for the entire site to see how the individual pieces fit into the puzzle. I think that's very important. And as the mayor said, we have 26 acres of property that is being pulled out, if you will, and being developed separately. And we need to see how all this fits together. And that really concerns me. That the fact that we do not have a master plan other than the steps that we've seen today. And we have had, as Mr. Davis said, the staff has had discussions with Mr. Melching's company, and we have encouraged that. We still think that that is the appropriate course of action, and depending on how this forward turns out, maybe that will end up being the course.
Commissioner? Well, since I'm chairman, I'm going to have the last say here. Ever since I read the details of the sale of this property, I've had kind of a knot in my stomach on the fact that Sappy can walk out of here and sell this property and not be responsible. And then when I heard that was already allowed, that they didn't need to get permission, now that sent a shiver right up my spine. They're talking about scrap metal here, and it's, hopefully he says that wasn't going to happen. But we have very little control over a lot of this property, and what property we control over. I want to make sure that the city thoroughly looks at it and does what's right for this community. Okay, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Spataro,
Yes.
Lizette,
Yes.
Smith, Warmington,
Yes.
Mahalski,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Any other business come before the special meeting? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Hey, for a lot of people, it was a crash course in civics, and I think it turned out beautiful.
Me too. Fantastic. And no one was intimidated by the police or arrested. I'm very proud of everybody. And even the panel, they did fantastic. The city planners, I'm just thrilled with their decision. And I thank them for it.